Welcome to the Speak Like a Leader podcast with John Bates. Welcome to the show. With me today, I have someone from my own neighborhood, someone who is a neighbor, and I've gotten a chance to talk with him a little bit. And one of the things that really stands out for me is his clarity of thought and his commitment to integrity, which is something that I really, really like and something that I think is tremendously important in a leader. And I think you're going to enjoy meeting him today as well. So I'm talking today with Joseph Woodbury, who's the CEO of Neighbor.com, which is a brilliant idea. It's a fast growing company here in the Silicon Slopes of Utah, where I live. And Joseph's agreed to join us and share some of the leadership lessons that he's learned in his relatively short, compared to me, career, but a very illustrious career. So Joseph, welcome. Thanks for being here with us on Speak Like a Leader show.
Absolutely, John. Thanks for having me.
My pleasure. Listen, I like to start out with, let's talk about first what you do, just because I mentioned it, Neighbor.com. Let's talk about what you do. I think it's a really, really exciting, interesting idea. And anybody who's curious, we're going to answer that right now. And then I want to jump into some of the leaders that influenced you, because, I don't think success shows up all by itself, right? It shows up informed and influenced. So tell us about Neighbor.com. I think it's a spectacular idea.
Yeah, we're building Utah's first major consumer peer-to-peer marketplace. We allow homeowners to essentially list space that's in their home, extra space in their basement or garage or shed or RV pad, and then we'll rent it out for storage. So we'll come store someone's boxes in your garage or their boat on the side of your home, and then you earn passive income every single month for essentially doing nothing. It's kind of the first sharing economy like Uber and Airbnb, but it's the first one you don't have to go drive for an Uber or do any work. You just kind of sit at home and make passive income as the months roll by.
I mean, Joseph, it does kind of sound like living the dream, right? Passive income for doing not very much.
Yeah.
We're all looking for that. And you're not just in Salt Lake City. You guys are in Tampa and San Diego and Miami and Phoenix. And you're in a lot of the major population centers, right?
We now have users in basically every single city in the United States.
And how long has that taken you, Joseph?
We launched the marketplace 5 years ago, and we started with just Utah, and we really focused on building a great product with the local market that we had here in Utah. And then we slowly started to expand and launch markets where we'd have a market launcher go into a market and we'd launch the market. And now we've shifted to a fully national marketplace. So again, we have users we offer storage in more cities than any other storage company in the world.
That is amazing. That's really, really cool. And listen, I think that's quite an accomplishment in 5 years. Like 5 years sounds like a long time, not a long time to do something like that though.
It's definitely felt like an accelerated, you look back, it feels like 1 year. It happened so fast.
Yeah. Yeah. I worked with a company called goldstar.com. I was the first employee, and we were one of those things that later ended up like we were the first, but we got half price tickets to live events in all the major cities in the US. And they had opened up Los Angeles, but I opened up all the other major cities and grew Los Angeles quite a bit. And I know that kind of growth and scale is it's a very, very intensive process. And let's go back, because here you are, you're certainly succeeding in a big way. Things are happening. I know you're hiring. I know that you're growing. let's go back and look at where did some of your core leadership skills and tenets and thought patterns come from?
Yeah, I think, life is a learning journey. So I don't think that I've learned everything there is to know about leadership. I'm constantly learning from each new employee that we hire. I feel
Okay,
like,
so first, let me just pause you there. That's the number one attitude, I think, period, for great anything. Great leadership, great public speaking, being great at sports. I heard a story about Kobe Bryant, who was practicing a new move, and the guy said, "Well, so how long are you going to practice this?" And he says, "Until." He just like, "You think I'm going to stop
yeah,
practicing this?" Right. So, okay. So perfect. All right. So there's one nugget already. We could end right now, and that's valuable. But keep going. Sorry.
yeah, and before I kind of dive into earlier stuff, I just think there really is so much to be learned from each person. We talk a lot about on our leadership team how the best department head out there is someone that hires people that are 10x better than them. If you're
Yeah.
constantly surrounding yourself, and it's intimidating,
Yeah.
it's that sounds great, but sometimes you hire people that are much better than you, and then you're like, oh shoot, these people are way better than me. Am I an imposter here? But isn't that the environment that you want to be in? Don't you want to be
Yes.
with people that challenge you and that are better than you and that you look up to? And so each new hire, we try to do that, bring someone that can teach us something new.
Yeah.
Going back,
Joseph, if I can just toss in a little saying,
yeah,
when I raised with my company, bigwords.com, when we raised our first couple $1 million, as they handed us the check, they said, and we were, we were four men, not unusual. They said, boys, B people hire C people because they want to look good.
yeah,
A people hire A plus people because they want to get the job done right and they're not afraid of learning something. Be A people. And we did that. That was some of the best advice I've ever gotten in my life. It's also one of the most intimidating things ever, right? But
yeah.
it's worth getting over.
We've used a similar phrase using the same language there, that A players hire A players, B players hire C players, and C players sink the ship.
Yeah, there you go. Wow, that's good.
Yeah, so it's all about having a team of A players, that's for sure. I'm
That's
glad they
awesome.
let at least one C player be on the boat. So
Yeah, right. Well, listen, that's not true, but it's a feeling that I've tried to get better at holding, is that feeling of like I'm the dumbest person in the room.
yeah,
And I keep reminding myself, at least I'm in the room.
right.
So,
It
and
it
listen, it's all head trash. Like we can let that stuff go, but it's up there, right?
Absolutely. So, in starting this company, we've had to really learn on the fly. My two co-founders, Preston and Colton, um, neither of them have ever started a company before. I'd never started a company before. I think all of us are relying on some kind of past early experience. We were all headed into professional services. None of us planned on doing a startup, and then here we are, the first year or two of Neighbor, trying to figure out how to build a startup. Um, One of the things that attracted me to Neighbor, one of the reasons I wanted to join Preston in this idea, is because he was just such a high integrity person. Um, I,
Yeah.
I was headed off to a consulting firm called Bain Company, and in making the decision to quit, to call Bain and tell him I wasn't going to show up and I was going to do this startup instead, I just kept thinking, I could go to Bain and then I could go to a different job. But when I go to a different job, I want to find people who I really look up to and enjoy working with. And I already have that in Preston and Colton, my two
Yeah.
potential co-founders at the time. They're
Yeah.
just high quality, high integrity people who I look up to. I could work with them today. Why would I waste time in getting to where I want to be? And that is working with people like this.
That's fabulous. That's wonderful. I think, and I think that thinking from an investor's point of view, that is one of the most important things that I think people don't always understand is that affinity and respect among founders is fabulous. I felt that way about my, my dear darling, my most darling company was called bigwords.com. And I felt that way about the people I worked with there. And it's the thing that'll get you through, right? So I remember when we talked earlier, I was like, hey, I'm going to ask you about when you were down and when you like maybe thought about giving up or didn't know if you could do it. Did one of those moments surface for you?
Yeah, I think back to one of our early rounds of funding that we raised. When we raised this last round of funding, it was a $53 million B round.
Congratulations.
Thank you. It was one of those where we had, investors reaching out to us on a weekly basis. And when we finally made the decision to do a round, it took 2 weeks to close and we had the money in the bank. And
yeah,
that's how I like to raise money. Easy process.
Yes.
The money's wired. That's not how every round has gone. I think back to
right.
to one of our early rounds, and we were working on the business. We were seeing some early signs of users loving this, but we didn't have the evidence yet that this was a business with a $70 billion potential, right? It was still kind of a crazy idea. Like, you want to store what and who's, that sounds crazy. Why wouldn't I get a storage unit instead? This is dumb. We were kind of in that phase that I've heard Airbnb was in, where people were like, why would I want to sleep on someone's couch? That sounds like the worst idea I've ever heard in my whole life. And
right.
We were out trying to raise. We were short on cash. None of us were making hardly any money. Trying to convince employees to stay on the boat, even though no one's making any money. Here's a lot of equity. We promise it'll be worth something someday. And just working our tails off, spending every waking hour working on this business, and then getting turned down by, investor after investor after investor after investor. That's hard.
That hurts.
That's mentally taxing.
Yeah. And so tell me about a moment when you had to like convince yourself to keep going. Was there one of those?
Yeah, in that process, it's like, okay, if these smart people, these very smart investors, if they're not, lining up at the door ready to put money in, why should we believe any different, right? Why are we smarter than them, right?
Yeah.
We've never started a company before. We're just 3 college grads that thought this might be a good idea because it happened to work for one of our co-founders. He basically stored his items in a neighbor's garage, and that's where he got the idea. It was such a great experience for him that he thought, hey, everyone could do this. But based on this one experience, we're just thinking that this will work for other people, and these investors are telling us that no, this doesn't have the right business economics, and so that was really a moment where you got to say, you know what, we believe in this product. Our users believe in this product. They love this. We are going to continue no matter what. If there's no money, then we're all just going to work for free. We're going to like will this into existence. And, we continued on. And then, a month later, we had the top venture capital firm in the country invest after 3 or 4 months of getting no's. We had Andreessen Horowitz lead their first ever round in the state of Utah. First time they ever led a round in Utah.
That's awesome.
And we got the founder of the guy that built eBay.com and was president of PayPal and CEO of OpenTable and took them public, and sits on the board of Airbnb and Instacart and Pinterest
Yeah.
and OfferUp. We got him to join our board. And because he saw the vision, he believed in it
Yeah.
just as much as we believed in it. And, it, but those 4 months before that, it's hard to tell yourself to keep going. I'm so glad we did, because here we are. And now,
Yeah.
several years later, with users in every single city in every state in the country.
Yeah.
And if we'd stopped at that point, all of these people who are deriving so much value from our platform, they just never would have gotten that value.
So tell me what you think the big takeaway for someone who's an entrepreneur and maybe in a difficult state, or anybody in their life. What do you think the takeaway from that is?
I think the takeaway is that, you have to decide what you believe,
Yeah.
independent of what other people think. I think all great things have initial. Elon Musk, who's an entrepreneur everyone knows. He
Yeah.
likes to say they laugh at you just before they start applauding.
Yeah.
And I think that's been the case for every great idea. Is it's unique. Peter Thiel, in his book 0 to 1, talks about how you have to have a secret, right? You have to have something. Otherwise, everyone's doing your idea and there's no value to be had. It's a perfectly competitive market and no one's going to create any sort of value there. If you're going to create something that has a huge impact in the world, it's because it's something that people think is a little crazy and people
Yeah.
think is never going to work. And so you're the only one in the world willing to work on this.
Yeah. And that's your secret, is that you know it and everybody else thinks you're crazy.
Exactly.
Been there. Yeah. I love that. And, it's one of those things that I think, a lot of times when I'm working with clients, we talk about imposter syndrome, and it's real, and it's always there, because there's always going to be somebody who's smarter than you or outranks you or is cooler than you or whatever, like everybody's got that. And what I realized a while ago, after all the coaching that I'd done with people and coaching I'd gotten myself and everything, is I really think that unless people are like sociopaths, which, is non-normal, everyone has imposter syndrome. So I kind of feel like it's like working with fractions. If all the fractions are over the same denominator, if there's a 5 under everything, then let's just divide everything by 5, get rid of that denominator and have done with it. And yet it's still a hard thing to overcome,
Absolutely.
And it sounds to me like there's probably something to the fact that you have so much respect for your two co-founders, and that you all have such an affinity for each other, that I got to believe that made it easier to keep believing in those difficult moments. Yeah.
It did. In those early days, you share a lot of responsibilities, and I've heard before that the number one thing that kills early stage companies is founder conflicts. I actually disagree with that statement. I think the number one thing that kills any early stage company is running out of money. I think that's what happens. But I think there's some truth to that statement, and it has been so amazing to have that kind of trusting relationship where very low ego. We all don't care who's getting to work on what. We all want to work on what's best for the company. There's a great article by First Round, which is a venture capital fund, that is called "Giving Away Your Legos," and it talks about how the best founders are those that can work on everything. And be willing to get their hands dirty and do anything, but simultaneously are instantly willing to give up their Legos as soon as it's time for them not to work on that. And we sat down and
very good.
We had a conversation when we first started the company, and we each kind of looked at each other and we said, if I'm ever not the right person to be the CEO, if I'm ever not the right person to lead our marketing, then we will instantly step down, right? Like
Yeah.
it's important for us that users have this product, whether or not we're the right person to do that. And I think that's created an environment where it's enabled us to become the right person because of that kind of low ego, like I don't deserve this position, I got to earn this position.
Yeah.
It's allowed us to become the right people to take it to, the national level.
Yeah. Well, and I talk a lot about mirror neurons in my work,
Mm,
and we all have them. We're all mirroring each other all the time. And, it's scientific proof for you get what you put out. So I've got to imagine that that's one of the cultural pieces that you have created at this company, because people are always mirroring up,
yeah.
and you guys being at the top of this company with that attitude, that's who you're going to attract, and that's going to permeate through the culture of your company.
Absolutely. I've watched people, employees join our company, lead a team, and then hand off that highly successful team they built and should be getting a lot of the credit for, and then go build a completely different team that we asked them to go build, and do it so successfully. One great example of this, there's an employee that actually joined us very early as our first intern.
Uh-huh.
And then
That's always a very special person.
it is. And then he joined us full time after he graduated. And since then, I think he's had a different role at the company every 6 to 8 months.
Yeah,
And just everything he touches kind of turns to gold, right?
that's great.
And that's because if he had been someone that had said, no, like I built this, I need to continue building this, this is my domain, he never would have had the opportunities that he's had, and the leadership opportunities that he's had, because he would have been stuck in the one area, right?
Yeah. Well, I know that you had some early mentors from your family in the realm of leadership, and that made a difference for you. You want to tell us about some of them?
Sure. Yeah. I think everyone's influenced by their early family.
Yeah. So I think that's a nod to really good luck when you get it,
That's right.
and who's influencing you and your family, right?
That's right. Yeah. I think it's a privilege to be able to have people you look up to. Um, one that we were talking about earlier, I have several family members who I really look up to and have learned a lot. My dad and others, but one was my grandfather, who I got to watch growing up in Las Vegas. He was always involved in local politics, um, and I remember really learning the importance of making the hard decisions from him, um,
Mm,
being willing to not do what everyone else is doing, or not doing what's popular, and instead do what's
yeah.
right. There was a moment, if you go read local Las Vegas political history, there was a moment when he was serving on the county commission in Las Vegas, when every single county commissioner um, on the Las Vegas County Commission was arrested, and sent to federal prison on bribery,
Oh,
and prostitution charges, except for my grandfather. He was the one
wow.
person that was not arrested, because in fact, he helped engage in that investigation, helped get the other people arrested, because he always made
Uh-huh.
the right decision, even when it was hard,
Yeah.
and even when there was a ton of pressure by these um, big influences in the community to take
Yeah.
these bribes and do these things. He just said no,
Mm-hmm.
because it's not the right thing to do, and I don't care if it sinks my career. And instead, what happened? It was really influential on me as a young person watching this. Instead, what happened is it benefited his career. People now saw him as the highest integrity politician in the state, and
Yeah.
he won all of his elections by 75%. Democrats and
Huh.
Republicans both voted for him just because he was so honest.
Yeah.
Um, and so, like, I got to see early on that those hard decisions pay off in the long
Yeah.
term.
Oh, it gives me goosebumps to hear that story. I just think that it all comes down fundamentally to integrity and your word. Like you really have nothing else, you know?
Right.
That's so fabulous. And so what a great experience and what a great thing that you got that lesson. Who's somebody else in that as you look back that influenced you in your
Yeah.
leadership style?
This is not a so again, I'll reach into the realm of politics. I'm a little bit of a political junkie, but um,
Uh,
and this person's not alive anymore. But I've always been heavily influenced by Abraham Lincoln. I've read a lot of
yeah,
Abraham Lincoln biographies, and one of the things that I've learned from him in reading several of his biographies is his willingness to work with people who brought different perspectives than he did. One of the
yes,
biographies I read was called Team of Rivals. He
yes,
he selected into his cabinet people who ran against him and who opposed his. You just don't see that anymore with kind of
no,
tribalism. You fill every position with people who align with you and your worldview. Lincoln didn't
yeah,
do that. He
yeah,
filled positions with people who were willing to stand up to him and disagree with him. He also, one more practice I've pulled for him is he often had disagreements, and he was often right and they were wrong, and these decisions had consequences. He had several people make decisions that were underneath him that ended up resulting in the loss of tens of thousands of lives that didn't need to be lost in the Civil War.
uh,
And as you can imagine, you get quite frustrated, right?
yeah,
And when Lincoln would be frustrated, he would sit down and write a letter to that person telling them everything he felt. And then he would take that letter and he'd fold it up and he'd put it in his desk and let it sit there for a couple days. And he'd often end up taking that letter and throwing it in the trash. Um, and it just great example of like get out,
yeah.
what you feel, your frustration, but then be level headed in in maintaining those relationships, which he was just such a master at maintaining relationships
Yeah.
across people that just very much didn't agree with each other.
I mean, there's so much in that. And the first thing is I think Twitter needs a Lincoln feature,
Yeah.
right?
Delayed
But
send.
yeah, exactly, right? Um, but the other thing that I think, you and I are talking right now in the midst of the Ukraine, Russia's war in Ukraine. And one of the things that I've been hearing a lot is, Putin is surrounded by people who are terrified to tell him the truth.
Right.
And there are CEOs like that. And I think it's, one of the problems with being a really charismatic CEO is that nobody wants to tell you bad stuff. They just all want to make you happy all the time. And it may not be from an evil point of view. It may just be that they just like you so much. But I think that being a safe space for people to disagree with you and for people to bring you alternative points of view is utterly crucial as a leader. And I think that we see how it falls down in both in politics and in business when you surround yourself with people that agree with you. And I think that one of the biggest pushes right now is this push for diversity. And I actually think that it's not just a feel good thing, it's an actual perform better thing.
Absolutely. I think one of the best, most reassuring things that happens on a regular basis here at Neighbor is that my department heads frequently tell me how much I'm an idiot. And that's great. I love it every time they're like, "Hey, why are we doing this?"
Yeah.
Because whether or not I end up taking the suggestion, I
Right.
love that I'm hearing that, and
Yes.
that permeates throughout the organization. We have something at Neighbor called that we talk about on a regular basis called the no politics rule, and this is based on things that other people have written, not us, but we've adopted it, and it basically says that what politics is in an organization is when someone says something about someone else that they're not willing to say to the person, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I
And
call that gossip.
yes, people could call it gossip. They could call it politicking to try and get something done by going around someone. And
Yep.
that's
Yep.
the one thing in our organization, like we just have a zero tolerance
Yeah.
for. Like
Yeah.
there is no politicking. If you have a disagreement or something, you go straight to the person and you tell them with radical candor, that exactly what you think needs to happen, and then we can have a discussion about how to make that happen, or you can get more information from the person themselves, because ultimately communication, I think, is the currency of companies, right?
Yes.
It's
Yeah.
how do we communicate directly? How do we have open communication? How do we have relationships where we feel comfortable communicating?
Yeah. I love it. I love it. Two quick things. I have an equation that I'm very proud that I created, since I'm not a hard skills person by nature, and it's L equals F of C. So leadership is a function of communication.
Mm.
And I totally agree with you that communication is the currency of just getting anything done. It's the currency of a company. And I want to acknowledge you guys for this. And I really want to make a big point of this for anyone listening to this. I believe that there is absolutely nothing else in the world that is more caustic to any human endeavor than what I call gossip and what you call politicking. There's nothing more caustic to groups of human beings than that. And to have a zero tolerance policy for that, and to not do it and to not participate in it, I mean, kudos to you for having that. And I think that probably speaks, that's one of the many reasons I suspect that you guys are being so successful. And, I think there's nothing more important than that. There are other very important things too, but there's nothing more important than that. I really acknowledge you for that.
Yeah,
How
and
did you come up with that?
well, again, it's something we've learned over time. There's a great venture firm called NFX that focuses just on marketplace, and they have a blog, and they wrote an article called the No Politics Rule, and we kind of
Yeah.
pulled that from that. We've added things from a couple books, one called Radical Candor,
Yeah.
and
Love it.
another called Crucial Conversations, because
Mm-hmm.
when you don't have politicking, it forces those crucial conversations, right? And
Yeah.
to your point, it just creates an environment. In the moment, it can seem hard, right, to have that
Yeah.
crucial conversation, but in the
Yeah.
long term, it's so worth it, because we've had employees join our company, and they just are like, my favorite thing about this company, I've been at companies for 20 years, and my favorite thing about this company is the first company I've been at where like everyone's just so open and honest and transparent, and like
Yeah.
you're you know the intern comes in and feels very comfortable, like telling the CEO where things are going wrong, and
Yeah.
that sort of environment, we just move fast. It pushes us fast
Yeah.
towards, let's talk about everything. Let's get it all out in the open. Let's build. If you think it should be built a different way, let's talk about it, and let's just get it built fast.
Yeah.
It speeds everything up. Having
Yeah.
no politicking, and politicking creates bureaucracy, and it slows things down.
I mean, I would characterize it as a massive catalyst versus a horrifically destructive acid, you know?
Yeah.
That's really, really, really great. And it is one of the things that I deal with a lot in my practice, is just this difficulty of conversations. And it sounds like you guys are experiencing this fully, but once people get past that initial fear of it, it creates an environment that's delicious. It doesn't seem like having difficult conversations would create such a wonderfully fabulous environment, but it's the thing that does.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's so much fun. It's so much fun to and this bleeds a little bit into transparency, which is another thing. We like to say at Neighbor, we're highly non-transparent outside of the company, and no one outside of the company knows any of Neighbor's numbers. And we're
Yeah.
highly transparent inside the company. So we have a meeting every Monday where we it, it's with the entire company. It's a full company all hands every single Monday, and we go through like every metric in the business.
Yeah.
And so every single employee from engineering to marketing to data to customer support, etc. They all know exactly where we stand from a revenue perspective, exactly what our costs are, how we're doing, and it's empowering to have information kind of out in the
Yeah.
open because
Yeah.
it allows you to make decisions based on that information. More informed. It's not just a few people with all the knowledge. It's
Right.
everyone's got all the knowledge, and so everyone's a professional. Everyone's smart. Everyone can make good decisions based on their role. Right.
Yeah. I would say trust begets trust.
Yep.
And I would say you are making it possible for people at any level in your company to be aligned with and fulfill commander's intent. Yeah.
Yeah, I haven't heard that phrase "commander's intent," but I really like that. Commander's intent. It kind of communicates that ownership mentality, right?
Yes. Yeah. Instead of dying on the hill you were told to take, it's not necessary to accomplish the larger objective. So you just go around it and we'll deal with it later. Way better. And but people can't do that unless they're informed. And I think that there is a certain piece of human nature that sort of thinks hoarding knowledge is somehow giving you power. And that may have been true in the past, but I just think companies can't compete that way anymore. It just does. It's non-functional in the fast moving environment. And the more companies push that trust and knowledge and license to act, the further they push that out to the furthest edges, the better the results are.
Absolutely. I mean, you see this in the whole knowledge economy, right? Like, what did the
Yeah.
internet do? It distributed knowledge, and has it slowed down growth? No, it's sped it way up. Now people have a lot
Yeah.
more resources, and they don't have to go get a PhD to know things. They can learn that all on their own.
Yeah. Back in the day, because, I feel like I was John the Baptist for the internet. I was going around. I got on the internet in 1987 and had my light bulb moment that this was truly going to deeply change everything.
Yeah.
And then I proceeded to try and tell people about it. Nobody, nobody wanted to talk to me. I mean, the math professor was way more interesting than I was
Yeah.
at the parties and whatever until about 1994. But back in the day, there was this great quote that said the internet treats censorship as damage and routes around it. And I think it's the same thing now, but in a corporate setting, I would change that to say, the knowledge economy treats information hoarding as damage and routes around it. I think rather than being like a power broker, you just very quickly become irrelevant if you're hoarding that knowledge.
Completely agree.
Cool. So listen, what we only have about 5 more minutes. I know you probably have something coming up, but what should I have asked you, or what would you love to say that I didn't bring out yet? Is there anything?
Oh, I've just enjoyed talking about all of these things that we normally just get to talk about inside our company. I love to share them. One thing that um, we haven't touched on that's really important to us at Neighbor is this aspect of community, which I think
Yes.
really tees off of what we've talked about: communication, transparency, community, and not just within our company, but in our broader society at large. We talked about some of the benefits of the internet. One of the things that maybe has been an externality of the internet is it's pulled our communities apart,
Yeah.
because we're digitally connected with each other more. We're not physically connected with each other. You go to a neighborhood around the country, and neighbors don't know each other. They don't talk to each other.
Yeah.
They may wave hi, when they're getting into their cars on their way to work, and be cordial, but no one has any sort of deep relationships with their neighbors because we're all connected on Facebook, and that's where we can interact. Well, you don't interact the same way on Facebook that you do in real life. People are willing to say things that they would never say face to face. You take two people that disagree on Facebook, you put them in the same room. They may still disagree with each other, but they're going to get a lot nicer in how they present that information, and say, oh, well, here's how I feel about this. And that's much better than saying you're a loser. And so we see this on our platform. We'll connect neighbors. We're called neighbor for a reason, right? We didn't call this store this or stash that or something to do with storage.
Great point.
We are connecting neighbors in communities all over the place, and we have a lot of them write us in, and they'll say, I've lived next to this neighbor for 5 years, and I've never said more than hi to them. And then I booked their space, and it created an opportunity. It created the excuse. It broke down the awkwardness. I went over to their home. I was moving my boxes into their garage, and they came out to my car and they helped me carry boxes in. And we got to talking, because what else are you going to do? You got to talk. And we realized we have a lot in common. And I'm a Democrat and they're a Republican, and we don't hate each other. And how cool is that? I just did I just did a news interview in San Diego a few weeks ago with a host and a renter we have there. And they met each other through the platform. They live close to each other. And now they go to lunch like every 2 weeks. And so if we can create more opportunities, for neighbors to take care of their neighbors, for neighbors to do things for their neighbors, then, what other problems do we have to solve, right?
Yeah.
We think about these big macro problems, these big political problems, but if every neighbor just took care of their neighbor, then would we have any problems? Everyone would be taken care of. And that's our mission as a company is, storage is just the beginning. We want to continue creating those opportunities and breaking down those barriers of awkwardness. If it takes a transaction, if it takes me paying you to break down that awkwardness, then so be it. Maybe we need transactions in our lives to bring back the opportunities to interact with our neighbors and kind of bring back this nuclear community that used to exist.
Yeah. Wow. I love that, Joseph. And I want to keep in touch with you, and I want to follow what you guys are doing. And I'm so glad you brought that up. I wish I would have asked that question earlier. So listen, I just want to say thanks a lot for taking the time to talk with us. And I want to say congratulations, because you guys are really crushing it, and it's awesome. And, and as Han Solo said, don't get cocky, kid.
Yeah.
But keep it up, because I think that you have what you just talked about now is what I call an empowering context. Content is king, but context is emperor. And that to me is probably one of the top reasons, along with all these other fabulous things we've talked about. But that context, that's what'll get people out of bed in the morning on a tough day, right?
Yeah.
Is that vision of neighbors taking care of each other all over the world. And you are doing that on a daily basis. And is it storage in a garage? Yeah. But is it the bigger context too? Absolutely. So thank you for taking the time to join us. And I'm really excited about what you guys are up to. And I want to circle back with you again in a while and hear what's new and how it's going.
Thanks so much for having me on, John. This was a lot of fun.
You are super welcome. And I appreciate you coming. And as you can hear, I've got my next call coming. I can't figure out how to stop that. So Joseph, we'll talk again. Thanks for coming, and have a really great day. And thanks for what you guys are up to. Thank you for joining the Speak Like a Leader podcast. Go be awesome.